This is the MFJ 1924 antenna controller connected to the Scorpion screwdriver antenna, and it does work. I had a lot of trouble getting it to work when I first got the antenna, which you'll see in the video. It's been 8 or 9 months, and it does work perfectly fine now. I'm not sure what the problem was. It may have been that I used Cat5 control cable instead of the 16 gauge zip cord that you see here. That's what you probably should use, or something thicker than that. But the antenna controller, the sensors in the antenna, everything does actually work perfectly fine. I'll give you a quick view of the antenna going up and down. And the antenna is moving. It moves very slowly, but any faster than this and you would never be able to tune it. Okay, this is the Kenwood TMV71A on top, and the Kenwood 480HX here on the bottom. And we're going to be talking about the Scorpion screwdriver antenna that is attached to it. This is a quick view from the second floor window of the installation. There's the antenna. And the conduit, I just ran it across the ground. It comes up there. I took a 90-degree elbow, heated it up with a propane blowtorch a little bit, and bent it to keep the rain out. Here I've got a tie plate and 4 steel cables that's holding up the antenna, and that's a 1-inch galvanized steel conduit along with the PVC electrical conduit. Here is our base of the antenna. I used Cat5 cable for control cable, that's all you need, and there's a toroidal choke here to prevent the antenna from using that wire as a ground plane or as part of the ground plane. Here's the antenna cable with 2 of the big toroidal chokes supplied by the manufacturer of Scorpion antenna. A little bit of foam to keep the bugs out. The box has got a relay and 2 shunt coils in there, one for 10 through 80 meters and the other one for 160 meters. Here's the antenna connector, and this is the electrical connector for the antenna. I have not been able to get the antenna controller to work, so the sensors for the antenna position are not connected right now, but these 2 are for the motor that move the antenna up and down, and this is for the relay to switch between 80 and 160 meters with the shunt coil. Here's our ground. We've got a copper ground rod. I sawed it in half with a circular saw with a metal cutting blade. We've got your flat copper braid cable that goes right up here. And that's connected there with some silicone to prevent any water from entering. And as you can see, we've got 4 steel cables attached to the tie plate. I just took a tie plate and bent it and drilled some holes. And this is 1/8 of an inch steel wire rope. And I bought 24-inch stakes at Home Depot and hammered them into the ground. The holes that the stakes come with are big enough for the 1/8 of an inch cable to fit through. And that's it. The ground plane is hardware cloth, 3 feet wide and 10-foot long rolls. I had to buy 7 rolls, unfortunately. It was pretty expensive. But it works very well as a ground plane. You can roll the lawnmower right over it. As you can see, the grass is growing through it, which is what I wanted. And it goes all the way out here to the end. And the same thing on this end. That's 40 feet long. And this is 30 feet over here. So we've got a cross ground plane And the flat copper braid is soldered on, of course, for a good ground. Works really well. The distance record for the antenna right now is Venezuela. It's about 2,200 miles. So I know the antenna works. The noise floor is very high in the summer, unfortunately, so there's a lot of background noise right now. I haven't been able to talk to anyone recently. And then here I took a permanent marker to mark where the antenna should be when you raise it for different bands. The 20-meter band is right there at the bottom. And then 40 and 80. Since the automatic antenna controller and the sensors are not working, and I haven't been able to figure that part out. But this is the Scorpion screwdriver antenna. It appears to be a very good antenna and worth the expense, I hope. And this is a good installation that's dog proof and bug resistant. I could have run the conduit up the wall. That may have looked better. I didn't think of that at the time. And I just painted the stakes orange. That was just a safety measure. Just an update to the video. I've had the Scorpion screwdriver antenna in the backyard for about 8 months now. There's been a few changes. The position is the same, the location is the same. The steel wire mesh or hardware cloth ground plane seems to be working out extremely well. Over here you can see a black wire that's 14 gauge THHN copper, which I ran to the end and I soldered along the way at every connection to improve conductivity. That seems to have made a little bit of a difference. And I know everyone's having a laugh at me for this one, but the Cat 5 control cable did not last. So I used a 16 gauge zip cord, 3 runs of that through the conduit up to the window, and that seems to work very well. I do not recommend the Cat 5 cable, as it turns out. It was cheap, but it didn't work. The antenna cable has been replaced with LMR 400 instead of the old RG8X that was here. The noise floor is basically the same, but I'm having much better luck with weak signals. Talked to Prince Edward Island, Canada, which is diagonally across the continent, so I think it works pretty well. The only other recommendation is I do not recommend using conduit this small. This is 1-inch PVC electrical conduit. I recommend 2-inch at least. As big and ugly as that is, when you want to change the antenna cable, it'll come in handy. What I had to do to change this antenna cable was connect the two ends to each other and pull the cable through the conduit, and I could have ripped the end off the cable. But the LMR 400 is pretty well made and no damage was done, but it was still risky. So I recommend larger conduit for sure. And I definitely do not recommend using Cat 5 cable for control cable. As you can see here, we've got a few toroidal chokes. You need one on the control cable to protect the MFJ 1924 antenna controller. I've got one here on the grounding cable, which goes down to the ground. There's another one down here. There are 2 toroidal chokes on the LMR 400 cable. This is a pretty big cable, as you can see. It's almost as big as my finger. And here is the shunt coil relay box for the shunt coil for 80 meters through 10 meters and another coil for 160 meters. This provides power to turn on that relay to go down to 160 meters. That also works well. The only other thing I did to make it nice and neat was I extended the conduit all the way up below the windowsill on the second floor. And you can see the flat copper braid cable which goes into the conduit. I ran that down the conduit and I had it come out the bottom right there where the conduit meets. I did not glue any of the conduit together because I want to be able to take it apart. All I did was right here in the middle and here at the base of the antenna, which is the lowest point, which does get pools of water, I used silicone. But when I ran the wires through the conduit, when I replaced the control cable and the antenna cable, there was no moisture at all, so it seems to work very well.